Hello and welcome to your Newsmax Daily for Wednesday, March 19th, 2025. It is the 12th Wednesday of the year, the 15th day of Lent for Christians around the world, and St. Joseph's Day, also known as the Feast of St. Joseph, commemorating Joseph, the husband of Mary and father figure to Jesus. And man, would I love a St. Joseph pastry. Today is also the 89th and final day of winter, with spring officially arriving tomorrow. A lot of people are, of course, excited about that. There are several major headlines, including the president's phone call with Russian President Putin about the war in Ukraine that we have to get to. Protests overnight in Israel after Prime Minister Netanyahu ended the ceasefire there the day before. Here at home, the ridiculous, senseless attacks on innocent people's Teslas because of Elon Musk is continuing. DOGE checks are back in the news. I was just thinking about that yesterday, and it was one of the first stories that I saw this morning. The DOGE checks could be coming, although they could be less than $5,000. Several judges have ruled to block several of President Trump's executive orders. The American Federation of Teachers says it's suing the Department of Education and the Trump administration for shutting down access to affordable repayment plans for millions of student loans. But first, another promise from the president fulfilled. Greg Kelly reports.
All right, moments ago, 80,000 pages just hit the internet related to the assassination of John F. Kennedy on November 22nd, 1963, and a lot of stuff that happened before that. For instance, was Oswald under surveillance by the FBI? Was he checking in with the FBI? Was he being monitored by the CIA? It's a lot of documents. Now, don't believe the headlines. They're out there right now. Oh, this is a big nothing burger. Who can go through 80,000 pages that fast? Some people are putting it into ChatGPT and saying, well, ChatGPT says it's nothing big. Don't buy it. There's some really explosive stuff in here, potentially. I got my hands on a couple. Just have to process a couple of things, and we'll be on it in just a moment or two. Breaking news tonight, and President Trump made good on his promise, as he's been doing basically every day since he became president, America just not accustomed to this. President Trump broke the mold, both in term one and this time around as well. It's pretty great. All right. Now, there's one I have right here, and it's from, it looks like it's a CIA memo in July of 1967. The day after the assassination, Gary Underhill left Washington in a hurry. Late in the evening, he showed up at the home of friends in New Jersey. He was very agitated. A small clique within the CIA was responsible for the assassination, he confided, and he was afraid for his life and probably would have to leave the country. Less than 6 months later, Underhill was found dead, shot to death in his Washington, D.C. apartment. The coroner ruled it a suicide. J. Garrett Underhill had been an intelligence agent during World War II and was a recognized authority on limited warfare and small arms. He was also on intimate terms with a number of high-ranking CIA officials, arms dealer, broker, all this stuff. Clients, he actually bought equipment from the same place where Lee Harvey Oswald bought the rifle. This is good and very interesting. We also have this. It might be a crank letter that purports to be from John F. Kennedy Jr., sent to the U.S. Capitol, and it says, Dear Senator Biden, you are a traitor. Signed, John F. Kennedy, and it's actually it's sent from an address in Massachusetts where he may or may not have had property. 8,000 documents. We got to take our time with this, connect the dots, needle in the haystack. Can't just put it in ChatGPT and hope for the best. There's stuff that I think they're going to find, and maybe, probably shouldn't, but one interpretation says that the CIA and the FBI were actively monitoring and that they have record of a phone call placed by Oswald to the Soviet embassy in Mexico where he said the job is still on. Now, this is a summary based on the documents, and a lot of things are coming at us fast and furious, so we're not going to be able to process this fully for a while.
That's Greg Kelly, host of Greg Kelly Reports. 80,000 documents. Yeah, it's going to take some time to process. And knowing what I already know and have heard over the years, over the decades, I'm interested in that letter. Well, I'm interested in hopefully a lot of what's in there, but the letter Greg mentioned from JFK Jr. to then Senator Biden calling him a traitor. That's hopefully the kind of stuff we're going to see in there. So you'll be hearing plenty today about the JFK files. I said it yesterday. Other people are saying it, but what's happening with the Epstein files? Hopefully we won't have to wait 60 years for that. But in Attorney General Pam Bondi's defense, she and the FBI and the Department of Justice have been busy rounding up criminals from the most wanted list. Kash Patel posting on X that a third most wanted suspect has been detained since January 20th. All right, President Trump did not get Russian President Putin to sign on the dotted line for a full ceasefire in Ukraine, but Putin did agree to stop targeting Ukraine's energy grid. Bianca De La Garza broke the news.
Welcome back to Newsline. Breaking news right now. We are getting details of the call between President Donald Trump and Russia President Vladimir Putin, which lasted more than an hour, almost 2 hours. And the Kremlin also putting out a statement confirming that they have accepted a ceasefire proposal for 30 days. Some other details are now coming in on the discussions and the potential of what the relationship between Russia and the U.S. moving forward looks like. Blaine Holt, Brigadier General, Newsmax contributor, standing by with a reaction to this. Blaine, great to see you. So this call went on for some time. We know President Trump and Vladimir Putin had maybe had some discussions before about land, President Trump had said, we're going to talk about land, we're going to talk about Zaporizhia. I just want to update our viewers, if they are just joining us. The White House's statement said that they will agree on energy and infrastructure ceasefire. They're also going to agree on negotiations on implementation of a maritime ceasefire in the Black Sea, a full ceasefire and lasting peace to come. So as we look at stages of this, negotiations beginning in the Middle East, it doesn't seem like maybe they're as far apart as we thought. What's your read on this?
You know, I think a lot of us in this who watch this stuff, we were a lot more hopeful that there'd be a little bit more comprehensive nature to it. It does look like they're really kind of nailing down where they've got alignment, especially in the maritime spot and the power and infrastructure. It's so critical that those things are done. I know that the president also talked about the trapped soldiers and trying to get things wound down. So this is a mighty start. This is very good that the two are talking, but there's still so many details. And now there's enough out there for either Ukraine or the Europeans to really either balk out or get behind and support. The NATO peacekeeper thing is going to be a stick point with the EU, but for the Russians, that is absolutely off the table.
At least there is now discussions, negotiations moving forward. It's not a stalled deal. It is a deal that has some momentum, and we'll see where that goes. I also find it interesting that the White House's readout here also includes that they both agree Iran should never be in a position to destroy Israel because, you know, the question is, what is the shift of balance here? Iran, China, Russia, and now we see Putin clearly understanding that if he wants back into sort of the global players club here, making a deal, making it now may be the best window he has.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And honestly, the Iran question is a big victory for President Trump, because if Russia wanted to, they could make life very, very difficult in the Middle East using Iran as a pivot point. But Iran lost a lot of its wartime production capability out of the last Israel strike. This is a place where Russia can be very helpful. You know, the Russians have taken in a lot of Christians and Alawites just to save them in the Syria situation where you see a building terror state. And so I think President Putin well understands that if we're not going to go to a place World War III, then the Middle East is a cauldron, and the United States and Russia would do well to cooperate where they possibly can. This will also help pull Putin away from the welded relationship they have with China now, which quite honestly for the Russians hasn't worked out very well.
Retired Brigadier General Blaine Holt. So this could lead to ending the war in Ukraine and moving Russia away from the alliance that it's been building with China. Win-win, right? However, Zelensky and Ukraine are not going to want to give up any land. And after some 400,000 Russian fighters have been killed, Putin is not going to want to walk away without any land. That is going to be the caveat, if you will, or the sticking point in this whole thing. Texas Senator Ted Cruz spoke about it with Rob Schmitt.
All right, Senator Ted Cruz joins us now. Sir, good to have you back on. Big phone call today, lasted almost 2 hours. It's going to be, in my estimation, it looks like it's going to be largely an economic-based treaty, luring Russia in with the promise of a stronger country, I guess. What makes you think that this will work?
Well, listen, I have confidence that President Trump is going to resolve this war. The war in Ukraine needs to come to an end. Yeah. I think the president was exactly right in what he said on Truth Social. This war in Ukraine never would have happened if Donald Trump had been in the White House. This war was caused because of Joe Biden's weakness, his weakness as commander-in-chief that encouraged our enemies. I think it is time for this war to be over, and I think it's important that it end in a way that is a clear and unequivocal loss for Russia. Putin is not our friend. And listen, Russia has lost thousands and thousands of soldiers in this war. They've expended billions of dollars. Their objective was to conquer Ukraine, and they failed in that objective. I think that is important. I also am confident the president's going to end up with a resolution here that is an America First resolution. I'm encouraged, for example, that the president is negotiating a deal with Ukraine for us to get access to their critical minerals. That is good for America. And I think we don't want Russia selling its oil and gas to Europe. We want Europe buying American oil and gas.
Yeah, it's well said. You know, the critics are going to say that Putin is going to play this deal, get the economic advantages, build back up, and then make some kind of an aggression here, that would be in Putin's playbook. That's what he usually tries to do. I imagine that with somebody that's as savvy as Trump, though, and somebody that doesn't like to get played at all, and very worried about that he's not going to let that happen. Do you see in this deal ways that there are checks on Putin's ability to screw around with this deal?
Well, listen, at this point, we don't know the details of any deal yet, and I don't think a deal's been reached, so it's premature to assess that. That being said, I believe in peace through strength. I think the best way to deter a bully is to be strong enough that they don't want to mess with you. There is a reason that no new wars were started the first term that Trump was president. There's a reason Putin didn't invade any countries when Trump was president, and it's because Putin is afraid of Donald Trump. Joe Biden, nobody was afraid of. Not even his own German Shepherd was afraid of Joe Biden. That was bad for America. It was bad for the world. Look, there is a reason, Rob, that nobody goes and studies at the Neville Chamberlain School of Foreign Affairs. Weakness and appeasement do not work. And so I'm glad we again have a strong president. That's what America needs.
Texas Senator Ted Cruz on Rob Schmitt tonight. And I'm going to go back to Rob in a few minutes for his News from the Left segment. But we have to talk about the raging lefties attacking Teslas every day now, which is just beyond stupid. It's going to hurt everybody except the person that they mostly want to hurt. And Elon Musk says he's continuing to deal with threats against his life and his family. And instead of standing up and condemning the violence like they would be asking Republicans to do, Democrat lawmakers are doing what they usually do, fanning the flames.
The Democrat Party is in full meltdown. I've never seen a political party dig such a deep hole for themselves, but instead of acknowledging that they are the problem, the Democrats just keep on digging. And the drama is getting way old. Americans tune out the Democrat soap opera. That's the focus of my short preamble. The Democrats lost everything in the last election with their lawless, anti-American and socialistic policies. They have taken to calling voters stupid. They couldn't stand with a kid fighting brain cancer, stand with a girl who was permanently injured by the Democrats' transvestite policies. They have supported reparations to punish those who were never slave owners, to reward those who were never slaves. They opened up our borders to over 15 million illegal aliens from 168 countries, and that's just in the last 4 years, and the list goes on. Americans have rejected the Democrats' America Last nonsense, and what's the Democrat response? This.
Somebody slap me and wake me the because I'm ready to get on with it.
If you could speak directly to Elon Musk, what would you say?
Off.
And it takes an extraordinary amount of self-delusion to think that Elon Musk or Donald Trump give a about our public schools or about our teachers.
It's total bull.
Elon Musk and his hackers don't know about what it means to run a housing program.
Folks, it's not just your liberty-loving Latino here noticing. Even leftist cheerleaders at CNN are gently pushing back on the uneducated crassness and inauthenticity of Democrats.
I do want to sort of related, but on a different topic. You responded to Elon Musk's email to federal workers a few weeks ago here, asking them to account for what they've done in the past week. And I want to say to people, there's a bad language curse word expletive alert here ahead of this. You said this is the ultimate boss move from Musk, except he isn't even the boss. He's just a. And then you followed that up with, I'm on the side of the workers, not the billionaire bosses.
That's what leftists call you when you want to know exactly what government workers are doing. Are government workers beyond reproach somehow? Do their bosses, we the people, not have the right to know what they're doing to earn their taxpayer-funded paychecks? Of course we have the right to know. But if you ask the Democrats, well, they simply curse you out. Speaking of government overspending, as you know, the Democrats never met a tax increase they didn't like, and their MO has been to tax the living daylights out of our people to fund every crazy, nutty, illegal, and anti-American policy they've ever thought of. Even though the tax rate is what we, the people, concede to give our government, they still overspend by trillions. Elon Musk and DOGE are a big threat to that scam, thus all the Democrat cursing and such. In fact, the Democrats were so angry at government efficiency that Senator Chuck Schumer of the socialist New York pledged to lead the charge to stop Musk and President Trump by shutting the government down. Chuck Schumer is feeling the pressure, no doubt. He's canceled a book tour because he fears the leftist monsters he created, you know, the ones who have turned violent and are torching Tesla dealerships. Chuck doesn't want to suffer their wrath, so he's showing up on left-wing TV. He's yelling a lot. Oh, and he's bashing hardworking Americans.
And you know what their attitude is? I made my money all by myself. How dare your government take my money from me? I don't want to pay taxes. Or I built my company with my bare hands. How dare your government tell me how I should treat my customers, my the land and water that I own, or my employees? They hate government. Government's a barrier to people, a barrier to stop them from doing things. They want to destroy it. We are not letting them do it, and we're united.
Yep, Chuck Schumer hates Americans, but he loves big totalitarian government. Government is his whole reason for being, folks. He wants power to be able to tell you what to do, often against your own best interests. But Chucky's grip on power is at risk. The socialist congresswoman from New York, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, is blasting Chuck Schumer for reversing course on shutting down the government. She wanted a government shutdown, and she and her socialists are ready to fight for it, just like AOC is rumored to be ready to fight and challenge Chuck Schumer for his Senate seat. Grab your popcorn, folks. Or don't.
The Chris Salcedo Show is one of the longest running shows on Newsmax. It airs live at 4 p.m. Eastern. Senator Chuck Schumer, after his appearance on The View, also led the charge on the Democrats' so-called nationwide day of action. This is Newsmax congressional correspondent Kilmany Dukart on Capitol Hill.
Democrats right now are mobilizing on Medicaid in an attempt to unify. This was an announcement that was made by the Democratic House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries to try to get everybody in the party on the same page after last week's leadership split over government funding.
Chuck and I agree on the overwhelming majority of issues moving forward, including our effort to oppose the largest potential Medicaid cut in American history. And we're all going to have to come together. House Democrats, Senate Democrats, governors, elected officials.
Here's Democratic Senators Mark Kelly and Ruben Gallego holding town halls on Medicaid in both Phoenix, Arizona, and Scottsdale this week. Democrats are protesting the House GOP's plan, which calls for $880 billion in cuts over a decade from the healthcare and energy sectors, raising concerns about cuts to Medicaid, which provide health insurance for 1 in 5 Americans. Now, Republicans, as we have heard time and time again, Bianca, have pushed back against those claims that the program is going to be cut. Here's an exchange that I had with House Speaker Mike Johnson on the topic back in February.
Can you guarantee that under any proposal, Medicaid would not be on the chopping block?
Look, Medicaid has never been on the chopping block. What we're talking about is finding the it's non-benefit related reforms to the program, right? Medicaid is infamous for fraud, waste, and abuse.
Yeah, Senate Republicans, and this is important, will need 51 votes to pass the budget through a process known as reconciliation. This would allow them to essentially bypass the filibuster that Democrats would presumably use to block President Trump's agenda. So for all the protesting, if there are inevitably cuts to Medicaid, there's probably not a lot of that Democrats can do to stop it. But this is basically a messaging campaign after we have seen the fractures in the Democratic Party over the last few weeks.
As Speaker Johnson said, Medicaid is infamous for fraud, waste, and abuse. Like people who shouldn't be on Medicaid getting Medicaid, or a doctor charging $400 for a walker that you can buy at a medical supply store for $79. I've been through it with my parents. It's crazy. Or they just make people come in every week or every other week for some insignificant little thing so they can charge Medicaid. Several judges have now moved to block several of President Trump's executive orders, as I mentioned at the beginning, including the ban on transgenders in the military. Yesterday, U.S. District Judge Anna Reyes of Washington, D.C. ruled that it is discriminatory, unconstitutional, and uninformed. Another judge ruled that the Department of Government Efficiency's dismantling of the U.S. Agency for International Development, that's USAID, was likely unconstitutional, including the role that Elon Musk played in doing so. This is Judge Andrew Napolitano on Wake Up America.
Senior judicial analyst Judge Andrew Napolitano. Hope you're doing well this morning. So what was your initial reaction to hearing this judge's ruling that, in fact, Elon Musk and DOGE couldn't fire all these employees?
So this brings us back to where we were 2 months ago when the president first created DOGE. Who is making the decision to fire? Is it DOGE actually firing, or is it DOGE recommending to the president and the president is firing? In the course of discovery, where the sides exchange information back and forth with each other, in this case, DOGE said they did the firing. And since Elon Musk is not nominated by the president and confirmed by the Senate, he doesn't have the authority to fire.
Right.
If DOGE had said, we're just recommending, we're just gathering facts and recommending to the president, he's doing the firing, of course the president could fire the USAID people. So you're saying if the president
could fire people, then there'd be no issue at all. If the president said, I fired someone, then no one could bring a case, a judge could not overrule it.
With respect to USAID, yes, there are certain people the president can't fire, but with USAID, that's correct. So the problem is who's doing the firing. DOGE needs to get its ducks in a row. It is just a recommending entity. It doesn't have the authority to cut budgets or fire people because it wasn't established by the Congress and Elon Musk wasn't confirmed by the Senate. So it's the legal equivalent of advisors to the president in the White House who can give him all the advice he wants, but they can't pull the levers of power.
Okay, so I want to get into some events that have unfolded in the last 24 hours. So you had these gang members get on this plane. They were deported at the order of President Trump. While they were flying out of here, a judge said, no, not so fast. You can't do that. You can't deport them. You must bring them back. They said they were over international waters. They did not bring them back at the time. So then you have many Republicans coming out and saying, this judge should be impeached. We must impeach this judge. And then you have John Roberts, Chief Justice, weighing in on this issue. How unusual is it for someone in the Supreme Court to just send out a statement saying that, no, this is not an impeachable offense. We shouldn't be talking about impeaching judges?
I've never heard of it happening before.
And there's a statement right there.
Correct. The statement is an accurate statement of the law. The last time a judge was impeached for a decision the judge made, not for any crime committed, was 1804, and he was acquitted in the Senate. That's Justice Samuel Chase. Just a historical footnote. Chief Justice Roberts is correct on the law. Judges can only be impeached on the same basis as a presidential impeachment. Treason, bribery, other high crimes, and misdemeanor. Not a decision on the law with which you disagree. That's one side of this. The other side is judges and justices, that includes the Chief Justice, are to restrain themselves and not use their judicial office to enter a public dispute. So I think it was, even though the statement was correct, and I think he was trying to say to everybody, back off this district judge, he's doing his job, I think it was inappropriate for him to make that statement.
Great information and clarification there from Judge Napolitano, as always. My paisan. And I can almost guarantee you that Judge Napolitano is eating some St. Joseph pastries today. As I mentioned before, we'll end it with Rob Schmidt's News from the Left.
Welcome back. Time now for News from the Left. Kristen Welker on Meet the Press. I mean, got to be one of the worst questions I've ever heard for the Treasury Secretary. Take a listen.
Mr. Secretary, can you guarantee the American people here and now that there will be no recession on President Trump's watch?
Well, Chris, you know that there are no guarantees. Like, who would have predicted COVID? Right. So I can predict that we are putting in robust policies that will be durable.
Can you guarantee, because we all know that Scott Bessent has the little recession button that he can push at any time, that there won't be a recession? You're not going to push the button, right, Scott? We need smarter people doing these jobs. And I'm not the smartest guy in the world, but you got to be smarter than that. Next up, multimillionaire Joy Reid still spewing the oppression narrative. This one was rich.
My father was from the Congo and my mother was from Guyana. And so they were the immigrants who came here on purpose and they got the rude awakening. My mother got the rude awakening, like, oh, it's racist here. He was like, tell me this is the land of opportunity, but not for me.
Oh, it wasn't the land of opportunity for the Joy Reid family. How much cash do you got, lady, for being awful on TV? complain more. I'm sure somebody out there is listening. And finally, some really bad acting from the teachers union president, Randy Weingarten, who's been doing a lot of this lately, feigning a lot of outrage as Trump works to decimate the horrific Department of Education.
And when they cut half the people, it's like evisceration by 1,000 cuts. I'm so mad. I'm spitting mad about this because it's hurting the people who can't vote. Children don't vote.
I'm spitting mad about this. She is a terrible actor, first off, and she can't summon the will to fake it enough to pretend that what's happening to the Department of Education is not completely warranted, because she knows that it is. She knows that education has been destroyed in this country thanks to the federalization of it, and thanks to her union, which has decimated it, is god-awful, and she knows this. So she's got to sit there and claim to be spitting mad when everybody knows she's not. She knows it's what is needed.
Again, Rob Schmitt tonight, 7 o'clock Eastern on Newsmax. On Wall Street, the stock market's opened slightly higher this morning. The Federal Reserve is wrapping up its two-day meeting today. There is no expectation of any movement in interest rates, but there is a lot of anticipation, I'll even call it anxiety, of what Fed head Jerome, the profit killer Powell, will say about the economy later this afternoon. It is sure to move the markets one way or the other, so be looking out for that. Bitcoin and most other cryptocurrencies at the time of this recording were also higher. Bitcoin right at $84,000. There is a White House press briefing happening again this afternoon. Those have been eventful. Keep up with all of the news throughout the day on Newsmax, N2, and at Newsmax.com. Also, make sure you have the Newsmax app on your phone. It starts each and every day with Wake Up America, followed by National Report, Bianca De La Garza, all the way through Finnerty at 8, Greg Kelly reports at 9, and so much more. And you get all the great analysis from people like Mark Halpern, Judge Napolitano, Senator Rick Santorum, Hogan Gidley, Professor Dershowitz, and many, many others. I'm Tony Marino. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. Thank you, as always, for listening, and keep on fighting the good fight.
News breaks every minute, every day. You need the app, the Newsmax app. Find it free on your smartphone store. Then watch us anytime, anywhere.
Information. Truth is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.